Welcome to SWAYAM online course on urban local governance. In today's module, we'll be discussing on new terms on urbanization. Why do you think new terms are necessary? New terms are imperative with the growing population, with growing urbanization, movement of rural people to urban areas and making urban population more constructive. So, it is important to have a study on the new terms and policies and planning which is coming up as far as urbanization is concerned. So, today we will discuss on 3 or 4 important themes as far as urbanization is concerned. One is urban morphology. We will discuss also about new urbanism. We will discuss about what is urban ecology and also what is urban heat islands. It is important to understand this as students of public administration because urbanization is not only a concern as far as governance is concerned, but also administration is concerned. Urban planning is very important. So, students, today we will first move into the first point, which is urban morphology. What is urban morphology? It is nothing but the study of formation of human settlements and the process of their formation and transformation. So, we see that the human settlements has a pattern. If you see in an urban city, you will see that there is residential areas, there are slum areas and also informal settlements. So, it has to be categorized to understand how urbanization happens. It does not happen overnight. It happens as a slow process with the increasing demands and the needs of the society. We know that today's world, it is the most happening places are the urban cities. So, analyzing urbanization is an important aspect, and urban morphology helps us to understand how the human settlements are formed or transformed in a particular area. So, we need to have a foundation on urban morphology very constructively done. Now, if you ask me the definition, urban morphology is an analysis of specific settlements is usually undertaken using cartographic sources, and the process of development is deduced from comparison of historic maps. So, if you see a place few years back how it was and how it is, cartographic is nothing but the maps. Now, we have the GIS and the GPS system which is helping us to ascertain how a place exists. Now, this term morphology, especially urban morphology, was propagated by none other than the great poet and philosopher Goethe. So, urban morphology became an important study to analyze the cities, the metropolitan areas, the cosmopolitan areas, the municipalities, to understand how urbanization is happening in that particular area. If you take a city like Chandigarh, this is well settled urbanized area which is also very categorically well planned city. So, it is important that a city just does not grow just like that, but it is also imperative that it grows sustainably and also it has to be very promotive and productive, which is an important aspect. So, if you take the background of urban morphology, it can also be taken geographically. Urban morphology is a particular field which owes its study to many people, especially Lewis Mumford, James Vance and Sam Bass-Warner, Peter Hall and Michael Batty from the UK. And also we have Serge Salat from France, who are all central figure to urban morphology. So, urban morphology is considered as a study of urban tissue or fabric. So, we understand by touching a fabric how that fabric is, how the material can be used. Similarly, a tissue will actually guarantee how the anatomy of a person is or an animal is. Similarly, urban morphology is the study of the tissue, urban tissue of fabric, meaning that you have to discern the environmental level normally associated with the urban design. If it is too many buildings, you will see it is a concrete jungle with too many buildings and with not proper air circulation. The tissue becomes an important aspect and coherent aspect to understand how urbanization is taking place. So, urbanization also helps us understand the urban morphology. The tissue comprises coherent neighborhood morphology, especially on open spaces, buildings and functions of human activity depending on the occupation of that particular place. If you take a place like Venice, where there is water and there is also movement, there is also occupation happening, then the arrangement of urbanization will be planned accordingly. Neighborhoods exhibit recognizable patterns in the ordering of buildings, spaces and functions. Variations within the nevertheless conform to an organizing set of principles. So, it does not happen overnight, as I told you. Urbanization behaves based on the pattern of human dwellers. It depends on the dwellers, it depends on how strategically it is moving. Now, if you take the historical background, you can understand that Roger Transick discusses three major theories of urban spatial design and urban mythology that can guide analysis, which is figure and ground theory. It depends on how you position the place based on maybe the historical sites or based on the buildings or the nature of the environment, and also based on the linkage theory and also the place theory. So, three important aspects based on the urban spatial design, which is figure and ground theory, linkage theory and the place theory. Now, why we should think about these theory is important, because proper urban planning is essential if urbanization has to be successful. Otherwise, it will going to cause a lot of concern. Usually, urban areas are the place where trade happens, where businesses happen, and so it is important to be very conducive. It is also to be important place, because you need to plan how it has to be organized as far as trade is concerned without any confusion. So, there is 9 procedural theories of urban planning, which is rational comprehensive approach. You have the incremental approach, the transformative incremental approach, a transactive approach, the communicative approach, advocacy approach, the radical approach, and finally the humanist or the phenomenological approach. You can actually categorize every urban city based on these planning. It could be a rational comprehensive approach, say why Bombay is not the capital and you have Delhi as the capital, because the city is landlocked, and also it is good because the trade centers are not volatile, and so the city is based near a port, Bombay, and cannot be a capital because it could be a place where it can be attacked anytime. So, it is important to be protected. So, Delhi is more conducive as a capital. And also you see that population will increase as far as Bombay is concerned more than Delhi. So, it is important to have a capital city a little away from the major trading areas, so that it is easy for governance. We also have an incremental approach or transformative incremental approach based on the requirements, based on the needs. Say so many cities are now coming up like Indore, Surat, we have places like Vizag. So many cities are developing based on the trade and the need of the hour, and also transformation is occurring based on the need and the approach or the population concern. And it has to be communicative. You say Hyderabad and Bangalore are very communicative centers, and it is a center where many people, diverse people, come to those cities. It is also important to understand that some cities are also advocacy approach based on the need and the requirement. And we have a radical approach also, because we need every state to have a city, because urbanization is an in thing, and I said that it is a transformative need because of the urgency of administration, governance and trade, which becomes a center, and also it is a place where people can easily approach as far as important points and principles are concerned. And finally, you have the humanist or the phenomenological approach, where exceptional cities or historical cities automatically become a place of urbanization. The next point, you see that there is a school of thought, and I would say we can categorize the school of thought of urban morphology into three parts. One is the Italian school of thought, the next is the British school of thought, and the third is the French school of thought. Why the Italian school of thought? It's because it is a center around the work of Saverio Muratori and dates from 1940s. Muratori attempted to develop an operational history for the cities he studied, in particular Venice and Rome, which then provided the basis for the integration of new architectural work in the syntax of the urban tissue. So, if you take the urban tissue of, say, Rome, and as far as Venice is concerned, Venice is more of a leisure area. As far as Rome is concerned, it's more of historical area. So, based on the need, the architecture also changes, and based on the requirements and also for the occupation. If you see these two places, one could be a historical and or else a religious visit as far as Rome is concerned. Venice is more of a leisure, and also it is a place where there is a lot of fun, there is a lot of activities going on. So, based on the urban tissue and the need, the syntax was created. Based on the lines given by Saverio Muratori, it was also started by Gianfranco Caniggia, who conceptualized the city as an organic result of a dynamic procedural typology, which see political economic forces as shaping a built landscape already conditioned by a particular logic set of elements and characteristic process. So, there is some kind of basis, some kind of logic, some kind of political intention, socio-economic development, and that is why based on those tissue is what a city is built or urbanization happen, because it is easily accessible or it is easily promotive, and development happens in such a place. Now, if you take the British, which is one of the oldest planners, I would say, if you go to London, you will see the city is divided into two aspects. One is the historical place. You will see very old buildings. It is such a way maintained so that they don't lose the originality of the building. And also at the same time, you have new buildings coming up with the latest technology. So, British is a good example as far as urban morphology is concerned, because they were able to sustain the historical sites, the old buildings which are very strong, and even renovate it so that they can keep the facade of the architecture maintained, and at the same time they have distributed with the modern buildings. So, if you take M.R.G. Cozen, who developed a technique called a town planning analysis. M.R.G. Cozen, who developed a technique called town planning analysis. What is this town plan analysis? It's based on every aspect of the urban city. Say, if they see a group of streets, it was organized to a block, and then seeing the building patterns, the roads were facilitated, and the pattern of land use, and it was well maintained, and the landscape was designed based on the street structure and also the historical sites. So it is very evident that being a crowded city, London is also spaced out based on its spatial arrangement. The buildings are also arranged. The streets and their arrangement into a street system is an important aspect. The plots based on the landscape is also an important aspect, and it is then maintained as a block. And then the buildings which are coming under those areas were also in one particular form. So it is a well planned city, irrespective of the congestion, irrespective of the two dimensions of historicity and also at the same time modernization. Now, the third school of thought is the French. Now, if you take the Versailles School of Architecture, you know that French is very good for its designing, its architecture, the sense of fashion. So, they have emphasized on the importance of building spaces for sustaining social practices. So, they have given importance to social practices, social community bonding, and the relationship between the landscape and the social world is dialectic. So, this is shaping not only the landscape, but also the community they are living in. So, French has a very different viewpoint. It is not for just getting people to live in that place, but also having a theme which is a social theme, a social order, so that people are able to express in the form of art, in the form of fashion, in the form of their ideas. And so it is an amalgamation, say, of a social as well as an architectural order. Now, you can see other schools of thought with the Chicago school, which is propagated by W.I. Thomas. You have the morphogenetic school by Maitri Singhai. If you take the scientist Maitri Singhai and the mathematician Nikoi Salingaros, who has created a new school of urban morphology based on morphogenesis and emergence. So, in the nature of order, Alexander proposes that urban development is a computational process similar to the what we say a cell growth from an organism. So, based on a cell, it is developing. So, the other school of thought also emerges as a say a snowballing structure based on its requirement. It doesn't happen by well planned like the French or the British or the Italian. It just happens because of the need or because of the practices. So, the credit could go to both Maitri Singhai, Nikos Salingaros, and also the Alexander's Nature of Order, which talks about computational process. So, it involves a lot of planning, a lot of need, a lot of spatial arrangement. And now with the onset of AI, I think it is going to even develop better as far as urban morphology is concerned. So, some of the urbanists have sought transformation of this theory, and hence it is termed as emergent urbanism. So, as I told you, if there is an involvement of technology, the AI, then you will see how the spaces are well maintained, and also with small spaces there will be great development. Now, if you go into urban ecology, we have discussed about urban morphology. We understood that urban morphology has three schools of thought, main schools of thought, the Italian, the British and the French. And we also understood how imperative it is to understand this urban tissue or the fabric to arrange the spatial morphology or the spatial arrangement of that particular place. But it is also connected to this current topic which I am going to discuss, which is urban ecology. What is urban ecology? It is a scientific study of the relationship of the living organism with each other and the surroundings in an urban environment. It might sound very scientific, but in simple language, if you want to understand what urban ecology is, it is nothing but it is how human beings are living in an organism, which is termed as an organism here, but how human beings are living in an environment conducive and also which is maintaining a social order, a community living. And why it is necessary? Because of the increase of population. So, environment factor is also an important factor, because if you see that there is no proper ventilation, then there will be problems of diseases, health hazards. High density residential areas will cause calamities. Commercial buildings, and in many commercial buildings will also make it claustrophobic, causing lot of health hazards, depression. People will not have windows in a room, that is also going to be cause a big concern. So, you have to create an environment which is also saving spaces, at the same time giving a good living space for human beings. So, understanding the urban ecology is also important in any study as far as urbanization concerned. We might wonder why urbanization is such a threat. Yes, urbanization is threat because you see how the real estate is functioning. It's just flourishing, and it is causing a great concern. It's because the ecology or the environment is not taken into account. You can see that buildings are set up on wetlands, buildings are set up on fields which are not very conducive. So, if there is going to be an earthquake or a landslide, it is not going to protect that area. So, understanding the urban ecology along with urban morphology is an important aspect, because urban morphology talks about how the human settlements are there, and at the same time it talks about the planning of the city. And as far as urban ecology is concerned, it aligns with the urban morphology, because we are talking about the environment in which that particular city is balanced in. Now, if you go in depth in urban habitats, the urban habitats and the species that inhabit them are poorly documented, which is why more research should be done. So, I would say as an assignment you students can do is to study the urban ecology of the city you are close to or you are living in. Historically, ecology has focused on natural environments only. Like in the 1970s, many ecologists discussed or looked into the interests of ecological interaction taking place between urban environment. But now it is all the more important. It has to be done in the form of research to understand whether the documentation is done so that you are safe in that particular city. In the 19th century, if you take naturalists as Malthus, de Candolle, Lyell and Darwin found that the competition for resources was crucial in controlling population growth and in a driver of extinction. This concept was the basis of evolutionary ecology. Jean-Marie Pet's book in 1977, The Renaturalized Human, Brian Davis' 1978 publication, Urbanization and the Diversity of Insects, and the Scoops L. of 1979's article, The Soil, Flora and Vegetation of Berlin's Wasteland, are some of the first publications as far as the vegetation is concerned, as far as urban ecology is concerned. If you take these books like Renaturalized Human and also Urbanization and Diversity of the Soil, Flora and Vegetation, you can see how nature is also working as far as urbanization is concerned. You see many birds become extinct. There are many plants which are not growing as usual. So, there is some reason behind this. So, there is a need to do research. What is stopping the environment around to be developed or being sustained as far as urbanization is concerned, because later on it will cause health hazard. There are natural plants, some plants which are endemic, which is essential as far as human beings are concerned for the proper, say, for your proper oxygen, and that is essential. And also you need to have some birds as far as the food chain is concerned. So, it is also important to understand the landscape ecology and also the population ecology. So, here in urban ecology we add from planning, we also understand urban ecology about the landscape as well as the population concerns are. Now we come to the new concept of new urbanism. New urbanism is an urban design movement that promotes environmentally friendly habits by creating walkable neighborhoods containing a wide range of housing and job types. Now, if you see, many of the housing structures here is based on township aspects. It has happened in United States. It has also happened in our neighborhood places also, if you see. Many places have adopted the township concept because you need an environment of being at home. You need walking space. You need some space for breathing. And that's why they've made a place which is environmentally friendly, at the same time it is also your livelihood. So it has influenced many real estate owners, and they have taught constructively how to adopt measures that could also promote economic and also environmental development. So green buildings are set up. Now, as far as the land use is concerned, the municipal plays a very important role, and new urbanism attempts to address the ill associated with urban sprawl. And of course, after the Second World War, reconstruction was important aspect. So constructively, new urbanism is not falling a prey to the real estate owners for just want of money and compromising on the facilities. So the government also plays a very important role. So they need to see that the plan is subjected to certain procedures, so that they follow some kind of ventilation and some kind of procedures, so that the population there is also healthy. So after new urbanism, which we have discussed, we also need to understand what is urban heat islands. An urban heat island is an urban area that is significantly warmer surrounding its rural areas. In rural areas, because of agriculture or farming, the space is more open. As far as the activities and the work is concerned, then you see that an urban area is more congested. So the temperature difference is therefore very seen, very visible as far as urban areas is concerned compared to the rural areas. Especially you see the difference, and also you see the difference in the sky. When you see the pollution content, you won't be able to see the stars in the sky because of the pollution content, and it's more apparent when the winds are weak. And the buildings play as a wall against the movement of the winds also. So urban heat islands are some concern as far as research is concerned, and they've identified that many areas, especially the cities, are urban heat island areas. So when the concept of smart city came also, the need for a green city was also essential. It is just not technology, but also having an eco-friendly city, because they realize that the urban areas are becoming very hot, and you can see the difference in summer and winter. And the main cause of this urban heat islands effect is from the modification of the land surface. A study has shown that heat islands can be affected by proximity to different types of land cover. So proximity to barren land causes urban land to become hotter, and proximity to vegetation makes it cooler. So waste heat generated by energy usage is a secondary contributor. So as the population grows, the concern of urban heat islands also increases. The term heat island is also used in many areas, because where there is consumption more, when there is a factory, and also it is heavily distributed with human beings. So urban heat islands needs to be understood, and it is also important, because you need to know what are the reasons for urban heat islands. It could be even paving the roads. The roads are usually made of tar, which is black in color, which absorbs a lot of heat, and that also radiates a lot of heat. The roofs of the building are also generators of heat, because if it is painted in black, it can absorb a lot of heat. And of course, the pavements, if you take the concrete, also is absorptions of heat generation, asphalt, and also the geometric shape of the buildings, which actually deflects and reflects light. also causes lot of heat generation, and that is termed as urban canyon effect because it generates a lot of heat. So, unplanned expansion and urbanization is an important thing which we need to understand, and also it is important for you to understand what is happening in your city. So, I would suggest that you all write your topic of a city near you and see whether they have the urban morphology in your own words, in your own thinking, and also understand about urban ecology and also about the urban heat islands, whether it is a urban heat spot. So, today we have discussed on urban morphology, new urbanism, urban ecology, urban heat islands and the need for urbanism. Thank you.